All right, greetings everyone, Mr. Shea here. Welcome to some basics of economics. My students, this is really just to get us into thinking about economics as we dive much more deeply in class next week. The random people that are watching this video, what's up? Welcome. This is not meant to be a super in-depth economic theory video. However, if you are like, I don't know anything about economics, this is actually a pretty good place to start. So let's kick it. We got some tea. Life is good. What are we doing? So economics, what is it? What the heck? What's going on? Really what economics is a study of how people satisfy their wants and needs. And that's it. It gets much more complex, but the general look at economics is very simple. So what are wants and needs? Needs, basically food, water, shelter, clothing. Those are what we as humans need to survive. Obviously, in different places of the planet, food, water, shelter, and clothing are, the needs for them are different. If you are living in the north, you're going to need a lot more shelter and clothing. If you're living near the equator, not so much. So wants, on the other hand, are very different. Wants, number one, are unlimited. We as humans have unlimited wants. Most creatures on this planet, they pretty much just have needs. Whereas ours are unlimited, they always are happening, and they're super variable. So there's not simply like, oh, that's a general want of humans. Like we all as humans have very different wants from person to person. So economics really is studying how we satisfy both of these two things. So most of these two things, the way they are delivered, those needs and wants are through goods and services. Now, a good is really anything that is tangible. A good might be tea. I really need to stay awake right now to record this video, so I'm going to buy some tea. That would be a good. Whereas a service, I provide you as students a service that, as a teacher, I am educating you about certain things, like economics. When you get sick, you go to a doctor. The doctor provides a service where they figure out why you're sick and they prescribe a remedy. So goods and services are really the ways that needs and wants get to you. Mostly, we talk about goods and services, and as Homer Simpson says here, money is the key part of it. We exchange money for goods and services. We're not really going to be talking about bartering this year in this class. So we're not really going to talk about it today, but that is certainly another way you can get goods and services is through bartering if you don't have money. Now, these goods and services that can satisfy those needs and wants, they depend on resources. And there's three types of resources out there. So natural resources are pretty straightforward. For me to drink tea, I need tea plants. Those are naturally growing things. Thus, it's a natural resource. Labor, on the other hand, for you to go to the doctor, you need to go to a doctor who has been trained, who has the skills of understanding sicknesses and problems and knowing how to fix them. So labor is really not simply just muscle, but also the knowledge and know-how of people. And capital. For things to get produced, you need ways to produce them. So capital is the structures that exist to produce our variety of goods and services. It could be a factory. It could be a hammer and a nail. It could be a truck that you're using to drive water to a different place. So capital is very diverse. Labor is really just people, and natural resources are what exist naturally in our planet. However, all of these resources do not exist just in infinite proportions. They are scarce, many of them. So scarcity is really the problem that economics looks at, because since we can't get everything all the time when we want it, there's a problem that needs to be solved. So there's really three causes of scarcity, three things that exist that make limits to the resources that exist. The first one is personal perspective. So you as a person, you might say, I am hungry. And that's you. You're saying that. You're saying, I don't have enough food around me. I haven't filled my stomach up. I need more food. So one person might have a very different amount of food they need to eat than another person. So that's personal perspective. Some people need things more than others. Second is poor distribution of resources. In some places of the planet, when it comes to natural resources, there's a ton of trees. Other places of the planet, there's not a lot of trees. So if you're trying to build a ship, you got no trees, super scarce. And the third one is an increase in demand. So certainly you might have a ton of trees and it's awesome, things are good. But if demand rapidly increases where you can't fulfill that demand with what's existing, then you're going to have scarcity as well. Now, how do we deal with the scarcity is really another important piece to it. One is you can deal without it. So if there isn't enough resources, you can find another resource that maybe fits and works. Or you just say, all right, that's not something I need today. So you can choose not to use an object. One of those needs definitely need to fulfill. If you're like, I don't have any water today, you probably need to find water. However, when it comes to wants, those can be ignored when it comes down to it, as much as you might ignore that. You can create more. So if we don't have enough trees, let's plant more trees. If we don't have enough oil, let's go find other places where there is oil. Let's go drill up in Alaska. So there's ways to get more resources when there isn't enough. And finally, it's using resources more wisely. If there isn't enough oil, maybe let's not use oil. Let's make more fuel efficient cars. Let's use different types of powering, solar. So there's really three different ways to solve scarcity. One, just deal with it. Two, create more. And three is using it more wisely. And those are really personal things. However, when it comes to large-scale economic systems, there generally is some sort of control on it. So when there's more people involved, there's more resources involved, and more development involved, then it gets much more tricky. So what we've talked about is very basic so far. Where it gets more complex is when it comes to economic systems. And this is really how goods and services are produced and distributed in a society. So if we were to build a house, these are 4 different ways a house could be built in a society. So let's just jump in. With a market economy, it's really a hands-off system. If you want a house, you got to buy it. You got to find someone to build it, someone to design it, someone to provide all the materials for it. And a market economy is really, it's up to the consumers, people that have those needs and wants, and producers, people that are producing the goods that fulfill the needs and wants, or the services. Now, for a market economy, the government, if there is a government, really stays out of it. They let things work out. Generally, what this results in is a lot of problems because people are acting out of their own self-interest. They are simply trying to make money. So there's a lot of issues and conflict that can create when it comes to a pure market economy, between the people that have and the people that have not. With a mixed economy, I'll talk about that in a second, but market economy is very different from planned economy. A planned economy is when the government controls everything. So you want to build a house? Well, you don't get to because the government is going to be building shelters for people already. A mixed economy, on the other hand, has some government intervention. You want to build a house? Awesome. Pay for it. Hire those people to do it. However, if you are in some sort of situation where you cannot afford to build a house, then the government steps in and they might provide housing for you. They might not build a house for you, but they will provide some sort of housing to take care of those needs that you have. Traditional economy, we're not going to really talk about. It's pretty much older economic systems. The Aborigines of Australia are a good example. They're hunter-gatherers. It's very family-based. They're not really producing a lot of goods and services that are surplus. They're really producing just really enough to live and keep going. The Amish people who live in Pennsylvania, mostly, they have a very traditional form of society where you want to build a house, everyone in town's going to show up and help and raise that barn together. Often there isn't as much money exchanged. It's more bartering. We're not going to really talk about that this year, so I'm going to skip over it pretty quickly here. That command economy that I mentioned, where the government's in charge, often the main examples are communist countries, where the government is in charge of deciding what is produced, how they're producing it, and how they're distributing it to the consumers. And the government has all of the power. Now, some problems with this: generally, communist forms of economies are seen as less creative because people have less incentive. The government's providing you your housing. They give you a job. They're going to provide enough food for you to survive. So if you have all your needs met, many economics experts don't see that as being very good to incentivize people to create and build and do new things. So there's a lot of issues with command economies, with incentive. They're generally very inefficient because the government's trying to control everything. Whereas if you're a business owner individually, then you can just control what you're doing. And with a market economy, as I said, it's really just up to the producers and the consumers of how to regulate things. And this is what can really create a lot of problems when it comes to the very rich and the very poor. The government really tries to stay out of it. The businesses set prices. You as a consumer have a choice to buy whatever you want. So this is not what the United States has. We have a mix. So we have a combination of these two, free market and government intervention. So in our country, you can start a business anytime you want, as long as you have the capital to do it. You can set prices at your business because of market forces. If there's a huge demand, you could increase the prices. You could drop the prices if you have a ton of resources. So you have a lot of power as a producer in America, and the government does not own businesses. However, due to the problems that can arise when the government doesn't step in, what generally happens is businesses are out to make profits, and they don't regard, or they disregard, a lot of things like workers and the environment. So there are a lot of government regulations in the United States to prevent businesses from destroying people and places. There's taxes that are involved that can, if you are making millions of dollars, your tax level is much higher than someone that isn't making as much money, so that the inequality is reduced. If you want to go buy cigarettes, that is your power in America over a certain age. However, they are taxed very highly because they're seen as sin products. This one says demerit goods. Since we know that they can cause harm, and they do cause harm, the government taxes those as an incentive not to buy them. But also the taxes from those, there's a lot of people that are suffering from physical and health ailments from cigarettes. Thus, some of that tax money goes to help pay for people's problems down the road. And if you can't produce, if you can't buy a house, if you can't get some of those goods and services that you really do need, then the government's going to step in and provide them for you. So we have welfare in our country that if you're not able to get, especially those needs of food, shelter, clothing, water, then the government is going to provide those for you. So we have a combination of these two, that yes, we want people to have freedom and power to buy things and to create businesses, but we also want to ensure that people don't collapse and die. So very basic introduction to how our system of economics works, and really what the goal of the study of economics is to do. Remember, it's very basic, just understanding how goods and services and needs and wants are fulfilled. So, welcome, those of you that are new. What's up, strangers and students? I will see you in class on Monday.